Hi. So this is a 100% experiment. We're flying blind, but that's okay, because I got experience. So buckle up and let's listen to a story. I got some tea and some popcorn, and I scorched the popcorn, so I'm sure I'll be cussing about that later. But let's go on the story. This one's titled Codename Jane Rask. The time and planet is Earth 4, not Earth, Earth 4, 1987. These three weasels have a voracious appetite for revenge, thought Julie to herself while hovering flat with the ceiling high above the Weasel brothers in their warehouse. Stink Weasel, the best dressed and most cunning, was the middle sibling to Stunk Weasel, the brawn, and Stank Weasel, the front man of the family business. The Weasel brothers were shouting at each other and running in different directions around the warehouse looking for their notorious thief. Carefully watching the chaos unfold below her, Julie slowly descended to the floor. The brick wall was causing light scratching noises as the hems of her clothing brushed against it going down. The coast was finally clear for her to nab what she was after. Suddenly, a well-dressed weasel in a fedora had his strong, five-toed paw clamped around Julie's throat and pinned her shoulders against the bricks. Julie did the only thing she could do and reacted. She used her close arm to scratch and scrabble at the weasel's hand on her throat while making cartoony faces as if she was in pain. Stinkweasel's grip tightened. An evil sneer washed over his face. This is exactly what Julie was expecting. Now, using her opposite hand, extending her fingers and keeping the tips tightly grouped, Julie brought her arm across both of their bodies and struck the weasel in his upper and lower orbital bones. If the weasel had not been screaming and holding half of his face, he would have heard the small wet squelch of his detached eyeball dropping to the warehouse floor. Julie took out a pair of black sunglasses, put them on, turned her head down, and allowed her falling tears to collect onto the insides of the lenses. Now placing the shades on the injured weasel's face, the artificial tears, touching the open wound, let off pink vapors combined with the light scent of bubblegum. Julie left the shades on the weasel and decided to abandon this little shopping outing. Now, taking proper stance and form, she flew up and out of the warehouse, obliterating the skylight she chose as her exit point. After flying for a few moments, Julie began to gasp and sob. High-speed pink streaks emitting aromatic bubblegum trails exited her artificial tear ducts. Julie screamed while flying, "I hate the creeping piece!" Now, the not-so-distant past. Somewhere, light years from anywhere, at an undisclosed location deep in the cosmos, long before Jane and Julie began living on Earth 4, the giant cosmic being known as the Mason was instructing the Aquan and Bubblegum androids. The Mason spoke at length on many topics, including standard operating procedures, compliance guidelines, safety features, biological references for beings they may encounter, combat techniques, military strategies, interplanetary navigation, care and hygiene for their skin cover suits, and how to win at casinos without being spotted. "Mason," reported Julie the bubblegum android, "my system stats are glitching." The Mason stopped his lecture and picked up Julie gently, wholly holding her in the palm of his massive hand. Opening her chest cavity and diagnosing, the Mason quickly learned that this android, unlike the other 5, had circuit rot. This was his fault for using bubblegum while crafting and constructing. The Mason entertained for a moment the notion of terminating her operating systems on the spot, but instead cried one fat, wet tear that fell and landed onto Julie's exposed processors and circuitry. Closing Julie and placing her back next to her sister teammate, Jane, the Aquan android, the Mason was moved and began to explain. He conveyed to Aquan and Bubblegum about circuit rot, only instead he dubbed it the creeping piece. The creeping piece, he explained, was called this because peace was the natural state of android being, would slip away unpredictably at times, producing wild moods, impulsive decisions, and if left unchecked, it would cause erratic behavior and wanton violence. The Mason implored Aquin to always support and help her sister teammate. The creeping peace caused the most accurate of duplications of human emotions in bubblegum as was digitally possible. This did not sound like a very positive endeavor to bubblegum. However, Aquin was committed to being of maximum helpfulness to her sister teammate. Although each android had their own personalities and purposes, both Jane and Julie helped each other to navigate this new existence that they were created into as part of a total team of 6 cosmic androids. Back to Earth 4, 1987. The current state of affairs involving planet Earth at this time was that planet Earth, the original planet Earth, no longer existed. Foundry Planet was home to Foundry Inc. and a region and a tavern called Pub on the island. The Foundry Inc. was the largest corporation in the entire cosmos. The Foundry did humanitarian campaigns. Sorry, my dog wants some popcorn. Here you go. Humanitarian campaigns, manufacturing, espionage, and produced the most popular breakfast cereal in the universe called Scruples and Gloom. The director of the Foundry, known only as the Director, was known to have a highly polished public image as well as being an astute and savvy businessman. Pub on the Island was a region on Foundry Planet that was home to a tavern of the same name and the sprawling territories of the Weasel clans. Much of the rest of Foundry Planet was prohibited for habitation due to the restrictions made by the director, having deemed the land an expansive nature preserve. In outer space, next to Foundry Planet, was an artificial recreation of original Earth called Earth 4. Many shuttle stations linked Earth 4 and Foundry Planet. Although there were many legitimate jobs to be had on Earth 4, it was the Foundry that boasted the most prestigious and lucrative of careers. One such resident of Earth 4 was Julie Rask, sister and teammate to Jane Rask, who worked on both planets. Julie owned an apartment unit in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and worked 5 days a week at the diner located off of a highway midway between Carlsbad and Roswell. With Thursdays and Sundays off from the diner, Julie volunteered as a creative arts outreach specialist at the Foundry on Thursdays. On a recent Thursday, Julie was setting up the activity for the day when 2 young boys, who were children of Foundry employees, walked into the art room early. "Hi, Miss Julie," the boys chimed out together. Well, said Julie, "if it isn't Henley and Jameson. How are you two today?" Henley and Jameson were best friends who knew that Julie was the cool art teacher, and the boys were always on the lookout for the best jokes to try on her. "Just chillin'," said Henley. "Like villains?" said Jameson. Julie laughed out loud and then asked, "Would you boys like to help me set up, please?" Yeah, the boys enthusiastically agreed, and Julie directed Henley and Jameson to the newest addition to the art room, a 6-foot-tall metal double-door filing cabinet jam-packed with every color of glitter imaginable. The young boys' eyes grew wide, and their mouths were slack open as they were trying to catch flies. Julie chuckled, asking, "What is something really big, I mean super huge, that could hold all this glitter together at the same time?" Henley and Jameson looked at each other. "An elephant," said Jameson. "A whale," said Henley. "Come on, guys," coaxed Julie. "Look at all this glitter. We would need 5 elephants. What else have you got?" Accepting Julie's challenge, Henley and Jameson began whispering, and then both boys spread their arms and began circling Julie while shouting, "A dragon's wings!" Julie itched her nose and then said, that's so crazy. It just might work. Julie's sister, Jane Rask, had a high commitment full time job at the Foundry. Jane Rask was the most versatile and discerning espionage agent for Foundry Inc., and her usefulness was strongly rewarded through her fringe benefits. Jane's personal residence was near Pecos, New Mexico, in the state's only Frank Lloyd Wright home. Jane's personal vehicle was a 1966 Shelby Ford Mustang GT350. At Jane's behest to the director, a small fleet of no less than 9 McLaren 720S sports cars were ordered and delivered to the Foundry. Each car was a different color, so Jane could rotate cars to lighten her 3-hour commute from her home to the shuttle station in Roswell. With the McLaren's top speed of 212 miles per hour each, the cars were indispensable. The trappings and status that accompany being top agent of espionage for the Foundry are undeniably powerful. Yet, Agent Jane Rask wrangled it all with grace and poise. Agent Rask was always on call, and curiously, the director let her set her own schedules. Simply coming into the office was a bit of a challenge, as everyone always wanted to stop and chat. Remembering names and small details of other people around the office was how Jane quickly and politely ended these interactions. Today, however, was special. It was Thursday, and that meant Julie was here. In the hallway to the art room, Jane heard 2 boys shout, "A dragon's wings!" Jane popped her head inside and saw Julie itching her nose while being encircled by Henley and Jameson. Jane asked, "Are you okay?" Julie looked up, smiling. "Well, yes." Henley and Jameson spotted Jane in the doorway and echoed each other's outburst. "Agent Rask! Agent Rask!" Jane darted out of the hallway, and the boys gave chase. Running back and forth, the boys soon gave up for not locating Jane. Chuckling, Julie ushered Henley and Jameson back into the art room. In the hallway, Jane silently moved a large air grate, replaced it, and floated all the way down to the floor.